This is a synagogue. And here's one too. And another. From the outside, they are not easily distinguishable, neither in terms of their size nor their shape. And yet, all these sacred places are connected by both a remarkable and tragic history going back more than 3,000 years. It is a story of the Jewish people who worship not only here on this holy ground, but in all four corners of the world. Very few of these sacred places have survived history. They reflect the historical trajectory of a people. In order to survive, they have had to appear discreet, almost invisible. On the island of Djerba in Tunisia, they echo the architectural plans of a mosque. In the ghetto of Venice, like elsewhere, the modest exterior facades reveal nothing of their lavish interior. On the Iberian Peninsula, where the Inquisition managed to destroy practically all the synagogues, those who survived are exceptional. In Europe, the Second World War annihilated a major part of Jewish places of worship. The large synagogue of Budapest represents a rare example of those sacred places who survived. The Jews find refuge in the New World. There, a synagogue emerges, reflecting their newly found confidence and pride of becoming at last visible. At the crossroads of Asia, Africa, and Europe can be found the birthplace of the first monotheistic religion, Judaism. Here in Jerusalem, on Mount Moriah, the Jewish people build and then rebuild their temple, believing that on earth, this is the place closest to God.
There's no archaeological remains from the first temple, so we have to rely on the historical sources.
Orit Peleg-Barkat has a doctorate in archaeology. Her research is on the temples of Jerusalem.
So most of the details that we have come from the Bible. And there we have quite a vague description, but with some details about the plan and the measurements of the temple.
According to the Hebrew Bible in ancient times, Jewish pilgrims had to venture 3 times a year to the Temple of Solomon to pray and offer animals for sacrifice to their God. Entering, they traversed immense courtyards, then offered their animals for sacrifice to the high priests, the Kohanim, since only they could perform this daily ritual on the sacrificial altar. The Kohanim were also in charge of lighting the large menorah. These candelabras reminded the pilgrims that they were entering the most sacred site in the temple, the Holy of Holies, which held the Holy Ark, containing the 10 Commandments given by God to Moses and his people on Mount Sinai. God also entrusted Moses with the Torah, containing all of his commandments, as well as the history of the Jews from its beginning. The Torah corresponds to the Old Testament. Since antiquity, Jews have gathered in synagogues to pray and study the Word of God. In synagogues, the Holy of Holies is represented by the Ark, where the Torah is carefully stored. And the sacrificial altar is symbolized by a lectern, where the sacred scrolls are read.
As a matter of fact, sacred for us is never architecture. There is one place which is sacred, and God defines it with no architectural measures.
Rachel Elior is a professor of philosophy at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. Her research interests concentrate on the history of Jewish thought and, in particular, Jewish mysticism.
There is no divine description on the nature of the temple, architecturally wise. It's only a place which is commemorated and sanctified by the very presence of God. That's the nature of the temple.
Following the turbulent history of the Jewish people, there remains today only one visible remnant from ancient times, the kotel, wall in Hebrew. Judaism is a religion which is not fixated on images, statues, or objects, but rather is rooted in the power of memory, ideas, and words.
The sacredness is in the community. So the sanctity is not about a building. It's about the memory, about the ritual, about the text, about the teaching, and about the ongoing engagement of study and creativity.
A synagogue can be huge and richly decorated, as well as small and intimate. The word synagogue has its origins from the Greek, meaning gather, assemble. In Hebrew, they are called Bet Knesset, house of meetings, Bet Tefillah, house of prayers, and also Bet Midrash, house of teaching.
The synagogue could be in any place. It could be in a room, it could be in a house, it could be in a tent. Any place that these people are sitting together and studying could be a synagogue. The only requirement for a synagogue is the presence of the divine law.
Since 1967, there is a divided space reserved for women and for men on the western wall of the temple, the kotel. This obligatory separation was not always apparent in the temple, but today it exists in many synagogues.
There were no part for the women in the synagogue. Only later, synagogue with places for women would be added. There is a debate among scholars if in ancient synagogues there would have been a place for women, but there is a debate and there is no one opinion about it.
Women and men pray in front of the kotel, which is also called the Wailing Wall, in memory of the painful past of the temples of Jerusalem.
The Solomon's temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in the 6th century BCE. And then a few decades after that, the Jews came back from Babylon and reestablished the temple.
In 20 BC, Herod, king of Judea, who is placed upon the throne a few years earlier by the Romans, oversees the rebuilding of the temple. His ambition? To create the largest, most beautiful building in all the world. It will take him nearly half a century to complete this gigantic project, resulting in the largest edifice built of its time. The Jewish community of Jerusalem was never able to properly worship in this sacred place. Very shortly after completing the building work, the first conflict between Romans and rebellious Jews erupts.
So in the year 70, the Roman soldiers managed to get inside the Temple Mount, where the rebels entrenched themselves. And in this war between the rebels and the soldiers, the temple caught fire.
Following the destruction of Herod's temple, Jews no longer have a sacred place to make their pilgrimages. nor an altar to offer sacrifices to their God. This condition of exile amplifies the Jewish diaspora now spreading throughout the world, like here on Djerba. Djerba, off the southeastern coast of Tunisia, is the legendary place of Homer's Odyssey, who describes it as the island of the Lotus Eaters. According to legend, the first Jews who arrive on Djerba in the 6th century BC are refugees fleeing the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians. Their presence precedes the arrival of Islam by 1,000 years. Today, cohabits a population of 150,000 Muslims and 1,000 Jews. On this island, there are about 20 synagogues found in 2 villages, Haraskira and Hara Kabira, where the Great Synagogue of Jerba is located. Dominique Jarasset is an historian of art and synagogue architecture, in particular, those found in Tunisia.
The specificity of the Great Synagogue of Djerba, from an architectural point of view in terms of construction, has very old structural design because it really takes its inspiration from that of a mosque. This shows how the Jews of Djerba, but Jews in general, have this extraordinary ability to use the vernacular architecture of the local culture, to appropriate it, and then to reuse this within the framework of the Jewish ritual.
In a synagogue, just like what existed in the temple, there are 2 important locations for the Torah. The Holy Ark, where it is stored, and the Teba, where it is placed to be read.
The reading of the Torah is conducted first and foremost among the faithful. Because of this, the Djerbians have invented a square-shaped design for reading, which is ideal. This configuration means that the Teba is in the center and all the faithful are around it so that they can hear. The result is a circulation of prayer and reading in the synagogue.
When the men take out the Torah from the Holy Ark, it is in shadow. When they bring it to the Teba, it is in the light. Some synagogues of Djerba possess an architectural peculiarity, the skylight. It is a well of light created by 12 windows located just above the reading table. The oldest synagogue on the island is in the Haraskira quarter. It is a synagogue of the Gripa, built in the 6th century BC upon the arrival of the first Jews. Today, little remains of its original architecture. Its foundation is based on several intertwining legends, attracting pilgrims from all over the world.
After the destruction of the first Jerusalem temple, the Jews fled. Among them was a group of priests, and in Hebrew we call priests Kohanim. They carried with them relics from the temple, including a door. They managed to carry these relics from Jerusalem, cross the Mediterranean, and they arrived on the island, and they buried the relics in the ground, and they built a synagogue on the relics. And that is the mythical origins of the Djerba synagogue.
Ethnomusicologist Ruth Davis has focused her research on the Jewish music of Djerba, with a particular interest in songs related to the pilgrimage to this synagogue. The pilgrimage, which lasts 2 days in the spring, is not associated with the relics of the temple, but with another legend concerning a mysterious woman. Her name, the Djerba.
She seemed very strange, and the people of the village were afraid of her. And one day they noticed her hut had burst into flames. And rather than coming to see what was going on, they actually stepped away, and they thought this might actually be something magical and sinister.
According to the legend, her house is completely consumed by fire, but the flames do not destroy her body. Both Jews and Muslims believe that a miracle has occurred. A myth is born. The Jews of Djerba built their synagogue on this mythical site. At the same time, a rumor spreads that this very place has miraculous healing powers.
There is a shrine to her in the synagogue, and that is the little grotto where you see the women coming, placing candles and eggs.
Jewish and Muslim pilgrims write inscriptions on eggs. Sometimes all find their way beneath the Holy Ark, which houses the sacred scrolls of the Torah.
The cult of the grotto, of the laying of eggs, the fertility cult, was something that Muslims came for.
Throughout the duration of this yearly pilgrimage, the ritual separation between men and women disappears. This pilgrimage creates a social bond, similar to the one which once bound those who frequented the Temple of Jerusalem. The tales of a strange woman, the Djerba, and the high priests of the temple, the Kohanim, are mysteriously held together to create a direct link between Djerba and Jerusalem. Today, Jews and Muslims of Djerba continue to live side by side. There was a time when this coexistence was at the heart of an empire. The history of the Jewish people can be described as a succession of exoduses and exiles, leaving behind very few traces of their wanderings along the shores of the Mediterranean. In Spain, there is almost no pictorial representation of their synagogues which could record their history. It's a hidden history. Arabs conquer southern Spain in the year 711, transforming this rugged Christian kingdom into their own for 700 years, creating the second largest city of the time after Constantinople, Cordoba. The Arab invasion seals the fate of the Jews of Sepharad, the ancient Hebrew word for Spain. The Jews will live here during one of the most flourishing periods in their history. It's thanks to the help of the Jews that the Muslims occupy the peninsula so swiftly in just 3 years of conquest. In return, the Jews are given positions of power. They gain wide respect in Islamic circles, and their culture prospers. Over much of this time, Jews and Muslims coexist, enriching one another's lives and culture. This period, stretching from the 8th till the 14th century, will be known as Al-Andalus, the golden age of the Arab world in Andalusia.
The greatness of the city of Cordoba is linked to two communities, the Hispanic Muslims and our Sephardic Jewish community.
Sebastián de la Obra is a poet and writer. He is the director of a museum of Jewish culture of Spain, Casa Sefarad.
Between the 9th and 10th centuries, there's no other city in Europe where Jews play such an important role, which was not without consequences.
It was all too good to last. After centuries under Arab rule, the Catholics retake the reins of power. This period is called the Reconquista. For 5 centuries, no sound of Hebrew chants would resonate between the walls of this Andalusian city.
This small synagogue will not be discovered until the 19th century. During a storm, it was a terrible, devastating storm. The roof, in bad condition, caused a leak, which turned into a flood. On this particular night of rain and thunderstorms, the water got into the stucco, causing the plaster to become loose. They discover that it is a synagogue of Cordoba.
The hidden Synagogue of Cordoba is located in the Jewish quarter known as the Juderia. It is the only surviving synagogue in this city. Despite its construction during the Christian era, the decor of this synagogue is Moorish with the use of plasterwork called mudahar. It is probably the work of Muslim craftsmen.
This synagogue is the most beautiful on the peninsula because in the foundation of Jewish tradition, harmony, perfection, balance, and proportion are qualities associated with God.
The second chapter of the history of Sefarad opens here in the Christian capital of Castile, Toledo. In the Middle Ages, it is one of the most important cities of Spain. The Jewish community was established in Toledo in the 3rd century. But not until the 14th century did it achieve a brief period of prosperity. Here, there exists one of the most ancient and largest surviving synagogues of this period. Now a museum, but once a living witness to history. Garrido is an historian conducting research on Jewish art from the Iberian Peninsula during the Middle Ages.
If this synagogue is particularly tall in comparison with other synagogues, it is because its founder, Samuel Halevi, was the treasurer to Peter I, King of Castile.
Samuel Halevi, by virtue of his privileged status, is the very symbol of the social success of certain Jews on the Iberian Peninsula during the Christian era. At the time, the synagogue bears his name. Today, it is one of the finest examples of mudahar craftsmanship in the whole of Spain. During construction, Samuel Halevi is particularly attentive to the decoration of the eastern wall of his synagogue, which dictates that the Holy Ark must be oriented towards Jerusalem.
And the word Jerusalem itself is a plural in Hebrew. It has the ending ayim, as in Jerusalem. This has been interpreted as the existence of 2 Jerusalems, a heavenly Jerusalem and an earthly Jerusalem. This gives us the key to understanding that there are two levels of decor in the synagogue. One, which represents the earthly world, and the other, the celestial world, represented by the ceiling adorned with stars.
But the times are changing for Halevi. His king, Pedro of Castile, has him imprisoned, tortured, and finally killed. The wind begins to turn against the Sephards. Final chapter.
Towards the end of the 14th century and the beginning of the 15th century, there was an important anti-Jewish movement on the Iberian Peninsula. It was led by the clergy who preached against the Jews. The Jewish neighborhood of Toledo was targeted and attacked during this period of hostility. Most of the synagogues were burnt to the ground, and furthermore, many Jews were put to death or forced to convert. The slogan of the time was, "Baptism or death."
In 1492, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, who reign over the whole of Spain, expel from their kingdom 200,000 Sephards. This once thriving place of Jewish life, whose cultural effervescence deserves the title of the Golden Age of Sepharad, disappears from the Iberian Peninsula. 1675. The city of Amsterdam is flourishing. A prospering population, artistically and intellectually. Since their expulsion from Spain and Portugal, some members of the Sephardic community settle here with abiding confidence and prosper.
The Sephardic community that came to Amsterdam, to the Dutch Republic, consisted of refugees from the Iberian Peninsula.
Joel Cohen is an historian. He was director of the Jewish Museum, founder of the National Museum of the Shoah, and the Jewish Quarter of Amsterdam.
The Sephardic Jews came to the Dutch Republic, a republic at war with Spain since 1568. The decision was taken to build this synagogue. So we are in the middle of the golden century. So the architecture is the golden age. It's Calvinism, it's grandeur, grandiosity.
75 years after their arrival, the Jews from the Iberian Peninsula buy at great expense from the citizens of this Dutch city a plot of land surrounded by swampy marshlands. Their goal? To build the most beautiful, the most splendid of synagogues ever. Despite the many freedoms granted to Jews, they cannot join the guilds of Amsterdam, both those associated with architecture and with construction. So a competition is therefore announced, but only non-Jews can apply. It's Elias Bouman, a renowned architect of the time, who wins the competition by presenting a plan inspired by the Temple of Jerusalem.
In Jewish tradition, the laws of the temple, which were the sacred places of Judaism, the laws of the temple, the exile of the Jewish people, it's symbolized in each synagogue built anywhere, but also here.
Miriam Notter is an historian of art and curator of the Jewish Museum and also of the Portuguese Synagogue of Amsterdam.
For this particular synagogue, the architect, Elias Bouman, was inspired by engravings and scale models of the temple that were circulating here in Amsterdam.
Here stands, proud on her reclaimed island, one of the largest synagogues in the world, the Synagogue. All of Amsterdam is there to celebrate at the grand opening ceremonies on the day of its inauguration.
I think the whole building was symbolizing their new status as Dutch Sephardi Jews. always with the notion and awareness that it's temporary, that's exile, and so it's this dual function. It's a permanent, temporary home.
Venice, the Serenissima. Like many European cities, it welcomes Jews from the diaspora. Venetian merchants have traded with Jews since the 11th century, never allowing them to settle here. All will change in the spring of 1516. Those governing Venice, under the leadership of the Doge, grant the Jews permanent residence. They are offered a place to live, an industrial island which had been used as the copper foundry of the city. The first to arrive are from Germany. They are the Ashkenazi, meaning German in Hebrew. They are quickly joined by the Sephards from the Iberian Peninsula, the Jews of Italy, followed by those from the south of France and those coming from the Ottoman Empire. Out of this cosmopolitan explosion, 5 synagogues will emerge, representing each diaspora. The Scola Tedesca, the Scola Canton, the Scola Italiana, the Scola Levantina, and the Scola Spagnola.
The name ghetto was, in Venetian dialect, a reference on the foundry of copper, which was placed here in this area as a place for the Jews.
Donatella Calabi is an historian specializing in urban architecture. She has published numerous books on the Venetian ghetto.
This word gettare means in Italian, in Venetian, throw away. They threw away the rest of the copper in this area, in the middle of the square. It became ghetto when the German Jews were forced to live here, and they couldn't speak ghetto as the Venetian did. So it became ghetto.
From 700 Jews at the time of its creation, it expands to 3,000 in less than 100 years.
The synagogue of the ghetto, at the exterior, they are completely hidden. You don't have any monumental emphasis on their architecture. The only element that you can see from outside are the windows, the large windows, or the skylights.
In the synagogues of the ghetto, in order to read the Holy Book, as much light as possible is needed. This is one of the reasons why synagogues are positioned on the upper floors of the ghetto buildings.
This is a choice given to different reasons. One is religious, being near to the sky, near to God. The other one is the light, the possibility to take light directly from the sky.
This synagogue is lavishly decorated. On 3 of its 4 walls, a series of 8 biblical scenes are represented. Around the corner from the Scola Canton, the Scola Tedesca, the oldest synagogue of the ghetto, paid for by the Jews of Central Europe, the first to arrive. This decor was inspired by the theaters of the time. It illustrates the affinity which develops between the Jewish community and Venetian society.
The ghetto was a very cosmopolitan place. So a lot of different people having different behavior, different cultural attitude, different languages, completely different languages. They even didn't understand each other.
In 1575, the Italian Jews, who are the poorest of the ghetto, build the most modest of all the synagogues, the Scuola Italiana. With far less ornamentation, it is also the smallest, accommodating only 25 worshippers. 25 years after the creation of the Ghetto Nuovo, the city of Venice allots to the ghetto Jews a new parcel of land, the Ghetto Vecchio. Jews from the Ottoman Empire are the wealthiest. They establish their own synagogue within this new quarter. The scale of the Scuola Levantina testifies to their status. It is not found on the upper floors of apartment buildings, but it is completely autonomous. Still, in order not to draw attention to this community, the exterior facade is anonymous and discreet. However, the interior affirms their freedom to express their faith with flamboyant and confident decor. These sacred places are not only dedicated to prayer, they are also places of study and education. Religion is taught here. For this reason, they are all called scuola, which in Venetian dialect means school. The largest synagogue of the Venetian ghetto faces the Scuola Levantina. It is the Scuola Spagnola. As in all the ghetto synagogues, this is a living sacred place. The main ritual holidays and daily prayer services are celebrated here among the 17th century Baroque decor. 250 years later, in 1797, life for the ghetto Jews changes with the conquest of Venice by Napoleon Bonaparte. He orders their emancipation and the destruction of the ghetto gates. At last, the Jews are free to leave their ghetto to settle in other districts of Venice where they enter political and civic life and become, at least for a brief moment, Venetians among Venetians. In the first half of the 19th century, a carved headstone is found. Inscribed, a relief of a woman, a man, and a little boy. It dates from the 3rd century. It is a Jewish tombstone. Discovered not far from Budapest, where one of the first Jewish communities of Europe would have been established. Jews first arrive as slaves for the Roman conquerors. They will become their soldiers. They are free to own land, to start families, to build, to pray, and bury their dead. By the 11th century, with the expansion of Christianity, they lose most of these freedoms and are forced, as in Venice, to work in commerce and money lending. In the 19th century, with the industrial expansion of Budapest, the Jewish community successfully becomes integrated into the world of finance, politics, and culture. A branch of the Ashkenazi community of Hungary builds an emblematic sacred place, the Great Synagogue of Budapest, the Dohany. It can accommodate more than 3,000 faithful. It is then the largest synagogue in the world.
The Dohany represents the elite. So these were the emancipated and reformed Jews.
Rudolf Klein is an expert on the history of Central European Jews and the architecture of Hungarian synagogues, particularly those of Budapest.
The Gentile society liked the Jews to be distinguishable, at least in terms of architectural language.
The Jewish community finds itself torn between the idea of integration and that of not wanting to offend their non-Jewish neighbors. They commissioned Ludwig Forster, a renowned Viennese architect, to build a sacred place which combines their desire for integration while affirming their religion. Forster adds 2 towers capped with Byzantine bulbs, giving an Orientalist touch to the design so as not to confuse it with a church. He adds a nod to history by claiming that this architectural detail is part of the Temple of Solomon.
This Oriental style was the distinguishing element, and the basic idea was the Jews are the Orientals of Europe.
As a result of disagreements, architect Forster leaves the project once the exterior of the building is completed. He is replaced by the Hungarian architect Frigyes Fezel, who finishes the interior space. Frigyes Fezel also designs and sculpts the massive ark, as well as the overhead ornamental lamp, which contains the perpetual light, Ner Tamid, symbolizing the presence of God in the synagogue.
This was absolutely state-of-the-art mid-19th century, a modern cast iron structure. Jews wanted to state with that they are for modernization.
The Jews of Budapest do not just want to show their civic pride by commissioning a monumental place of worship. They also wish to convey the following message: we are here to embrace progress, technology, and the future. These concepts are integrated into the design plan of the synagogue.
The bima is traditionally a reading desk. Now here it is a mechanism which changes its shape. You push a button and it operates on itself. You know, traditionally Jews were waiting for the Messiah. And during 19th century, many Jews have mistaken modernity for the Messiah. So they saw in it a relief from all this suffering during the past, discrimination, persecution, modernity that, due to technology, will liberate all mankind. They were very optimistic, enlightenment, emancipation, and then it was all broken during the Holocaust, and it was really a big matter in Jewish history, and Jews lost the faith. So everything what is post-Holocaust is different from what has been before. Half of the Hungarian Jews perished. So everybody had an uncle. All my grandparents perished in the Holocaust. So we feel somehow uncomfortable. All this optimism that is shown here, it's an overstatement for us. And all this advance and emancipation was very relative, and it was not the final outcome. It was a phase in Jewish history which is really changing fast and profoundly.
The optimism of the Jews of Budapest will not last. The Nazis annihilate the synagogues of Europe, just as they do with the Jewish people. Throughout the turbulent history of Europe's Jews, many from the diaspora will make the crossing over the Atlantic. During the interwar years, the American Jewish community becomes the largest in the world. The United States is their place of refuge and freedom. In this land of welcome, an unlikely encounter takes place between a renowned architect, Frank Lloyd Wright, and a rabbi, Mortimer Cohen. Together, in the suburbs of Philadelphia, at Elkins Park, they design a sacred place which redefines the architecture of synagogues.
Wright worked very closely with the rabbi, and it's one of the few buildings he did that he acknowledged the client as an equal co-collaborator in its creation.
30 years ago, Alexander Gorlin, while still a student of architecture, was transformed by this iconic synagogue. It continues to inspire him and his work.
Walking in, I was completely blown away by the power of the space and the evocative nature of it, the light and the tilted planes of the floor, which was something that was extraordinary.
Frank Lloyd Wright, who is not Jewish, had designed many churches, but never a synagogue. Rabbi Mortimer Cohen asks Wright to create a building which marries the American spirit with that of the original spirit of Judaism.
Because of the destruction of the temple and the loss of Israel as the location of the locus of the Jewish people, the Bible and its interpretations became the heart of the religion. So it's one of the few religions in which the absence of the original center is at the heart of the space. This is a vessel of light. It's suffused with light. You're within a space of light. As Frank Lloyd Wright said, the space is the reality, not the container. So in this space, you sense that you are part of light, that you are created of light. And I think that kind of identity of the experience with light is what makes this unique.
On November 14th, 1954, Frank Lloyd Wright and Mortimer Cohen break ground for the future site of their synagogue, Beth Shalom, meaning House of Peace in Hebrew.
Wright's idea of organic architecture was that every detail would imply the whole and vice versa. The motifs you see, the triangular motifs along the edge of the beams, reiterate the idea of the triangle facets of the pyramid, which is also the plan itself. It's a kind of modified hexagon of overlapping triangles that recall the Jewish star, but is never literal.
Rabbi Cohen shows Wright photographs of the wooden pyramidal synagogue of Gomszczek in Poland. It is emblematic of a style of synagogues which were destroyed during the Second World War. On a structure made of concrete, glass, and steel, 30 meters in height, he adds 3 aluminum menorahs whose 7 branched holders symbolize the Jerusalem Temple. Wright designs a triangular-shaped chandelier of colored plexiglass, which is the centerpiece of the sanctuary space. He names it the Basket of Light, and for each color, he references ancient Jewish mysticism. Red, strength and courage. Green, insight. Blue, wisdom. Yellow, beauty. White, compassion. For Wright, the experience of the space does not stop with the decor of the building.
You feel contained within this building, as Wright said, within the hands of God. And in fact, he overlaid the plan of the building over the rabbi's hands.
For the 1,000 worshipers seated together in the sanctuary, Wright and Cohen want to forge, in the design plan, a sense of the story of the Jewish people.
The arrangements of the seats lends itself to the original idea of the synagogue as a place of assembly. So together, we pray as a group rather than individually.
Together, women and men of the Beth Shalom community pray and study the sacred texts here in this House of Peace. The architectural dream of a rabbi and one of the greatest architects of his time gives rise to a new language for sacred space.
Sacred space is about a feeling of otherworldliness, of a space that takes you out of yourself and into another realm, a connection beyond the individual to the divine.
Throughout history, millions of Jews lost their lives because of their religion, and many Jewish communities no longer exist. Their synagogues should have disappeared as well, but they did not. If synagogues could speak, they would say what they have always been: buildings that assemble, transmit, and connect. These buildings are humble enough to know that the sacred is found not in their architecture, but in the text of the sacred book, which they have protected for thousands of years.